As a former fighter in the NHL, what is your breakdown, your analysis on Jordan Binnington and his act over the last couple of years?
Yeah, I've been looking at that online a little bit. He's been doing that for quite a few years, and it's just like it's interesting. It's very uncharacteristic for a goalie to be like that. You know, you can only think of a handful of them throughout, the years who would kind of do anything physical or do anything outside of their own little bubble with the blinders on, is how kind of goalies usually operate. And then he's just all over the place, mask off, bumping guys, chirping nets, hitting guys, and I mean, I think we mentioned it before. Like when a guy like Chief Craig Berube is
Yeah.
telling his own goalie just to shut up and quit dicking around. Obviously he's kind of gone over the line, and it just seems to me like the act has gotten old to everyone, and no one's like loving it, no one's praising it, no one's saying, "Yeah, this is what we need." It's kind of just this weird distraction that has probably cost them more than anything, with him taking penalties and getting other guys involved. So I don't know. I find it interesting and funny to watch, and I hope he starts doing stupid shit tonight. But other than that, if he was on my team, I'd probably be like Chief and be like, "Can you just stop the puck and quit with this sideshow?"
Yeah, because it's so interesting. Like this guy won a Stanley Cup, so you sort of feel like you have to give him leash that says, "Hey, he's done this before. He's turned his act in gear and won some games for us." But then on the contrary, it's been a couple years since he's been anywhere remotely close to that guy who won the Stanley Cup a couple years ago, and you start to wonder if this is becoming a bigger story than it needs to, right, inside that locker room. And if it's like a side act or a sideshow when it comes to this team, if you're like a player in that locker room, whether you're Ryan O'Reilly, the captain, which we'll get to in mere moment, certainly in that conversation, or the head coach has already come out and said something, you have to think Craig Berube's not the first person to say something, right?
You kind of think so. I mean, usually you don't really tell goalies what to do too often. They just do their thing, and you leave them alone and let them get prepared. So it's always been this thing like, maybe don't touch his stick, or maybe he doesn't like to get whacked on the pads or hit both pads instead of just one because it feels uneven, and they're always doing something. You don't want to throw him off. So for him to do that, it might be a little bit tougher to say something. Like you said, he just won a Stanley Cup here in the last handful of years. So there is that respect factor, but you got to think that those guys, I mean, lots of guys on that team won the Stanley Cup with them. And like you say, Ryan O'Reilly being the captain, he'd be like, "Hey, like, we probably don't need that stuff, man. Like, I think we're starting to get off track. Like, you're too good of a goalie to get distracted by outside shit. Maybe you could try." But again, I don't know what kind of guy Binnington is and how he'd respond to that, but definitely interesting based on his actions out there. He must have some kind of a personality.
Dude, he's actually a good dude. Like, weirdly enough, I was in Scottsdale in June for a bachelor party, and I was out at the club or the bar or whatever in Scottsdale. An amazing time, by the way. And I bumped into Binnington. He was at a buddy's bachelor party, and like, I didn't know him very well, but I'd shot the shit with him before, so we started chatting. And I did bring it up. Like, we were laughing about it. I'm like, "Dude, you ever gonna fucking dance with somebody?" And he's like, "Oh yeah, oh yeah." Like, I know he was just kidding. But I just, it's important to note that like he does have a personality. And I think more than most people, having been and played professional hockey. Goalies are fucking weird to begin with, but I just think it's so hilarious how this sort of saga has taken on a life of its own the last couple of years, because every time he seems to be tough, 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 it gets time to dance and he doesn't dance, Rosie.
Yeah, it seems like he likes to just throw the little shot when no one's paying attention. No one would certainly expect it from a goalie after
Yeah.
the intermission when you're kind of crossing paths and bump into someone that way and then wait till the linesman jump in and everything else. But I mean, I think I don't know if it would do him better or not to actually fight somebody out there. Like it would certainly back up some of his stuff, but I think that would just give
Yeah.
even more reason for their team to be like, "What the fuck are you doing out there? Like, why? Just we have 20 skaters here who can, mix it up or do something like that. We don't need our star goalie doing it." But for whatever reason, he likes to get involved in that. Maybe it keeps him awake or gets him going. I don't know, but you got to think he's going to tone it down after he's getting so much attention for it.
Yeah, to me, it brings shades of Ronnie Hextall back in the day, but Hextall was not afraid to drop the gloves. But certainly, we'll see on the Binnington front. There's got to be a moment in time where somebody's like, "Fuck this, let's go," and he's going to fight whether he likes it or not. By the way, Binnington's from Richmond Hill, Ontario. 2-2-0, 4.41, 8.81 against the Leafs. Shoot the fucking puck tonight, right, Rosie?
Wow, yeah, those aren't the greatest numbers in the world. And I don't always like the numbers of like, this is how he is against this franchise in the last 3 years. It's like, who gives a shit what a number were 3 years ago? What has he done lately, and so I always take that with a grain of salt. But yeah, it doesn't
Yeah.
look like he's a big fan of playing against the Buds, based on those numbers.
Well, I can tell you those numbers are across the board this season, last season. So that backs up my expectation for this game tonight. Not to spoil my PointsBet Canada bet of the day, by the way.